Have you ever noticed how two people can love each other deeply and still end up hurting one another beyond repair? How relationships that once felt effortless can suddenly turn into battles of pride, control, and misunderstanding. We often think that love fades because of distance or differences or time, but more often than not, it's something far quieter, far more invisible, something that grows slowly between two hearts until it becomes a wall. That invisible force is the ego. The ego isn't just arrogance or vanity, as many believe. It's the voice inside us that says, I'm right. It's the need to win, to protect our image, to avoid appearing weak or wrong. It's that subtle but powerful impulse to defend rather than understand. And in relationships, where vulnerability and understanding are the foundation, ego becomes the silent destroyer. Think about it for a moment. So, how many times have you been in an argument where you knew you were right, absolutely sure, and yet winning the argument didn't bring peace, did it? Maybe you proved your point, but something in the connection broke. The warmth that once existed cooled just a little. The trust weakened because the ego got what it wanted, victory, but the relationship lost what it needed, harmony. When love begins, ego often sleeps. At first, we see the other person not as a competitor, but as a mirror of beauty, kindness, or possibility. We listen, we care, we try to understand. But as time passes, the ego begins to wake up. It whispers things like, why should I always be the one to apologize? Or, they don't appreciate me enough. Or, I deserve better than this. And those thoughts, small as they seem, start to grow roots. They start turning love into a transaction, a game of keeping score. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to say, I'm sorry, even when you know you're wrong? That's the ego resisting. It sees apology as defeat. It wants to protect the illusion of being perfect, in control, superior. But love doesn't survive in superiority, it survives in humility. When two egos meet, the relationship becomes a battlefield. Every misunderstanding turns into a war of pride. Every disagreement becomes a test of power. Instead of two hearts trying to understand each other, you have two minds trying to dominate. And what's left in the middle is silence, distance, and resentment. The ego thrives on comparison. It always needs an enemy, even if that enemy is the person you love most. It feeds on small grudges, on imagined slights, on fears of being unappreciated. It says, if they really loved you, they'd know what you need. It says, don't reach out first, let them come to you. It convinces you that protecting your pride is more important than protecting your connection. And slowly, the distance grows. But here's the painful truth. The ego doesn't actually protect you. It isolates you. It makes you defend walls that keep love out. It's like wearing armor in a place where you're supposed to be naked, emotionally speaking. Love asks for openness, but ego fears it. Love says, let me see your weakness. Ego says, never show it. Love says, I understand you. Ego says, I need to be understood first. Have you ever been in that place where the argument isn't even about the topic anymore? It's about being heard, being right, being validated. That's ego in action. It doesn't care about truth. It only cares about victory. And the saddest part is that victory always costs connection. Why do we hold on to ego so tightly, even when we know it hurts the people we care about? Because the ego is deeply tied to our sense of identity. It was built to protect us from rejection, from humiliation, from pain. As children, we learn that being wrong can lead to punishment or shame, so we develop defenses, layers of pride, justification, denial. The ego is not evil, it's scared. It's that inner voice that says, if I admit I'm wrong, I'll lose control. But ironically, that very control it clings to is what destroys intimacy. In a healthy relationship, both people must learn to lay down their armor, to let go of the constant need to prove and protect. But letting go of ego feels like dying, doesn't it? It feels like surrendering power, like giving up control. Yet in love, surrender is not defeat, it's transformation. Have you ever experienced that moment when a heartfelt apology healed days of pain in seconds? That's what happens when ego steps aside. The heart takes over. Empathy returns. Suddenly, it's not about who's right or wrong, it's about connection. And in that moment, you realize that peace was always more valuable than pride. But the ego doesn't leave easily. It comes back in subtle ways and through sarcasm, silence, or emotional withdrawal. Sometimes it disguises itself as self-respect or independence. I don't need them. I'm better off alone. And yes, self-respect is vital, but there's a difference between dignity and ego. Dignity says, I value myself. Ego says, I'm above you. One heals, the other divides. The ego also distorts love by making it conditional. It turns affection into a reward. I'll be kind if you are. I'll open up if you open up first. I'll forgive if you apologize first. That's not love. That's ego bargaining. And yet, most relationships live in that state for years without realizing it. Think about how many relationships could have been saved if one person had simply said, I was wrong, or I miss you, or I love you even when we fight. But the ego won't allow it. It whispers, they don't deserve your vulnerability. They'll think you're weak. And so we stay silent, even when our hearts are screaming to speak. Over time, this silence becomes emotional distance. You still talk, but the words are safe, surface level, polite. You avoid the deeper truths because they require humility, honesty, vulnerability, the very things the ego fears most. And so, two people can live together, eat together, sleep together, but feel completely alone. Have you ever seen couples who seem to live like strangers under the same roof? They're not lacking love. They're suffocating under ego. The love is buried under years of unspoken pride, unresolved resentment, and the endless need to win. The tragedy is that the ego never feels satisfied. Even when you win the argument, it looks for the next one. Even when you prove your point, it seeks another battle. Because the ego survives on conflict. Peace threatens it. Vulnerability exposes it. So it keeps finding reasons to be offended, to be right, to be distant. But what if we saw relationships differently? What if we saw them not as competitions, but as mirrors that reflect our inner wounds? Every time your partner triggers anger, insecurity, or defensiveness, it's not just about them. It's your ego reacting to an old wound. Maybe they ignored you and it reminded you of being unseen as a child. Maybe they criticized you and it triggered an old feeling of not being enough. If you can see that, if you can pause and say, this isn't just them, this is my ego reacting, then love becomes a space for growth, not war. But few people reach that level of awareness because it's uncomfortable to admit that the problem might be inside us. The ego hates introspection. It prefers projection. It's easier to say, you're the problem, than to say, maybe I'm reacting from pride or fear. Yet the moment we take that step inward, something beautiful happens. compassion awakens. We begin to see the other person not as an enemy, but as another human being struggling with their own ego, their own pain, their own need to be loved. Have you ever looked at someone mid-argument and suddenly felt sadness instead of anger, like you both forgot why you're fighting and all that's left is hurt? That moment is clarity. It's when your heart sees what the ego can't, that both of you are just trying to feel safe, valued, understood. And in that realization, love returns. Ego destroys relationships not through one big explosion, but through 1,000 small moments of disconnection. A sarcastic comment here, a refusal to apologize there, a night spent in silence instead of communication. It chips away slowly until there's nothing left but emptiness. And what's tragic is that most people only realize it when it's too late, when the person is gone, and they're left wondering, why couldn't I just let it go? So how do we stop it? How do we silence the ego before it destroys something precious? The first step is awareness. You can't fight what you don't see. The next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, pause. Ask, am I protecting my heart or my pride? That question alone can change everything. Because most of the time, we're not protecting love. We're protecting the image we've built of ourselves. And here's the truth. Real love is not about being right. It's about being real. It's about saying, I'm scared, instead of pretending to be strong. It's about saying, I don't understand, instead of insisting that you do. It's about choosing connection over control. Have you ever noticed how children love without ego? They argue, they cry, they forgive within minutes. They don't care about being right, they care about being close. But as we grow older, pride replaces innocence. We learn to guard our emotions, to hide our softness, to equate vulnerability with weakness. And yet, love demands that very softness we've been taught to suppress. Maybe the key to lasting relationships isn't perfection or compatibility, but humility, the willingness to admit, I have an ego and it gets in the way sometimes. Because when two people can say that, when they can laugh at their own pride and choose each other over the argument, love deepens. It becomes more mature, more resilient, more real. Ego makes us believe that letting go means losing, but love knows that letting go is how we win. When you drop the need to be right, you make space for understanding. When you stop defending, you start connecting. When you stop shouting to be heard, you start hearing. So, I want to ask you something. In your own relationships, romantic, family, or friendship, where is ego standing in the way? Where have you chosen pride over peace? When was the last time you truly listened instead of planning your reply? Maybe tonight, after watching this, you could reach out to someone and not to fix everything, but simply to say, I care more about us than about being right. Because that sentence, simple as it sounds, has the power to melt years of ego in a single moment. Love doesn't die naturally. It's suffocated by pride, by silence, by the illusion of superiority. But the moment we choose humility over ego, everything changes. In the end, relationships are not destroyed by differences. They're destroyed by defensiveness. They're destroyed by the refusal to be soft in a world that glorifies being strong. So the next time you're in conflict, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, do I want to win this argument, or do I want to keep this connection alive? Because one will feed your ego, and the other will feed your soul. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest act of love you can ever offer someone is not saying, I'm right, but saying, I understand.